Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope you're doing well. We're in the midst of the battle with Jalil here, or at least Jalil's minions, and we pick up in Fairy 12, Volume 12. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll continue forward. So the battle with Erza and the Samurai Lady is not going well for Erza, but as you recall from last time, she switched off her armor, pulled out her two swords, and then we have like a samurai clash, like a Bushido one in like the bamboo forest between her, the two of them. And then we see Erza and her arm's all jacked. She gets like, oh, I got cut in the arm. And then this other lady, like, she explodes blood out of her like chest. So Shidanga did. At that point, Sho's cheering, but then she's like, death is on its way. It's coming. The Etherean, whatever, square is 15 minutes away. And so then Erza tells Sho to go get everybody and get him the fuck out of there. Well, she's going to go take care of Jalil. We then switch over to Natsu, who's being carried by Simon. And Natsu wakes up. They have a discussion. Natsu's aghast that he lost and Gray won. He's very upset and sad about the whole situation. And then finds out about Erza, and so he runs off to help her. But then to fight Gray, and then the guy Simon stops him and says, Erza needs help. She's upstairs. Please listen. And he explains that Juvia and Lucy got injured, and that is the cat lady and the pixel guy picked them up and carried them off, and that Shu left, and that Erza's going up by himself, but that he needs to go rescue Erza. And then Natsu's like, I don't wanna. When you get to the top of the tower, and Jalil's standing there playing his little chess game, and Erza shows up. And then we get a little scene. He takes his top off, and he looks exactly like Seagreen, which we're going to find out more about that in a minute. But she says that she's going to stop him. And then Simon, going back to Simon and Natsu, Simon's like, why aren't you going to help them? Or help Erza? And Natsu's like, that's her battle. She needs to finish it. And then Simon reveals to Natsu that there's like shenanigans afoot. And so then Natsu's like, ruh-roh, I got to go! And so while he's heading up to the top to help out Erza, we go to the battle between Erza and Jalil. So they're fighting. There's like explosions. There's shonen anime fighting. Blast this, blast that. Finally, Erza's on top of Jalil, and she's about to like stab him in the head. And he talks about how she's the sacrifice to bring Zelif to come forth, and that the squire's coming. And then we get a shot of like Gray, Lucy, Juvia, and like the rest of the crew, like besides Simon, getting taken out of there. And then Jalil mentions that there's only 3 minutes left and that it's going to come, and she's like, I'm going to hold you here and we're all going to die together. And then they have some more conversation about that. We go back and forth right now between the council. We see Seagrin and like the wall guy looking very serious at him, and they got the square right above the tower, and it's getting ready to go off. And they have a conversation about the R system, the resurrection system, and how you'd need like 200 Erda of like magical power, and that they have a conversation about how like they're going to get destroyed, and how even the tower can't hold all that power. And like it seems like Jalil's finally like coming through, and he's like, oh, Zarif had control over me, Zarif had control, or Zelif had control over me. I was just a victim, like, and we'll die together. And then they hug it out, and then the thing goes boom, and we see Natsu and Simon and everybody looking, and then Jalil looks super pleased, like he pulled some sort of shenanigans, which he did. We get a nice shot of the whole thing being like blown the shit out of and whatnot. And then we head to the little ship that's escaping with all her little friends, and Juvia has to rescue everybody because the ship gets tipped over and blasted and everything. And then people at the council are like, aha, we did it. And then someone's like, oh, I'm sad, something. And then as the smoke starts to clear, they see that dun dun dun, there's a giant crystal tower. In fact, it's not just any crystal, it's a lacrima. Lacrima is what stores magical energy. So there's a giant lacrima crystal that has absorbed all that magical energy, and it's exactly what Jalil wanted. And so going back to Erza, she's like, Jalil? And he's like, I did it, suck it. And he's like, the time has finally come. And then we see Natsu and Simon, and they're like, Nani desu ka? And so they're at the top of this tower, and then we see like a giant shot of it. And it's like, with this magical power, the air system is fully operational. And then someone walks up to Seagrin back at the council, and they're like, something. And then Seagrin just like fades away because he's not actually there. He's actually back over at the tower. And then there's a conversation between the three of them about how when Erza first met Seagreen, she attacked him, and he was like, oh no, I'm not Jalil, I'm his twin. And then she's like, you should have stopped your brother, something. And they go back and forth with this whole business. And then we find out that they're actually not twin brother. That was a lie too. Everything's lies upon lies upon lies. That actually they're the same person. That Seagreen was just like, Jalil had created like a mirror self version that got like sent over, and Good stuff. So, oh my goodness. So they merge back together, and now they're super strong, and this is all part of Zalef's plan, and now they're going to absorb Erza into the tower, and then she's going to be dissolved into the tower, and then she's going to be resurrected as Zedef. And then back at the council chamber, the whole thing starts collapsing upon itself, and then we see Altier, who is still doing the bidding of Sigrun, and she's like, "Oh, it's so good," and she's just tearing down the whole thing around everybody. And then our boy, Makarov's friend, is like, "Uh-oh, what's going on here?" We then get a shot of Lucy and crew, and they're like discussing a little bit about what's going on, and then Erza starts fighting the new Jael, who has all his magical power, and she's getting turned up. And then she starts getting absorbed into the tower, and he's like, ah ha 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 ha, because he put a chain on her when they were like hugging, so she can't actually do her powers. And then Natsu shows up and pulls her the fuck out, and he's like, aha, I gotcha. And then they talk, and he tickles her, and then she's like, you can't fight, I gotta fight. And he's like, oh, that's so sweet. And then he punches her in the gut to knock her out, which is like typical anime thing. And he's like, I got this. And then he's super mad. He's getting charged up because Jalel made her cry. And then Jalel's like, ooh, a dragon wizard, or dragon slayer wizard. I'm super excited. So they start fighting, and at first it seems like they're kind of evenly matched. They're going back and forth and back and forth. But then Jalel shows that he is, after he takes a big blast of one of Natsu's like attacks, he's wearing like this ridiculous like futuristic bodysuit with like, I don't know, it's super ridiculous looking. And he says, you ready for this? And he does this like meteor attack, and it's way too fast for Natsu. And he keeps getting faster and faster and faster, and then he just like blasts the shit out of Natsu. And then he's like, all right, time to get back to Erza. So he kind of like meanders back over there, and then Natsu like throws like a little rock at him, and he's like, you said I couldn't hit you, but I did it. And Jalel's like, the fuck? And also Jalel said something about like, oh, that was a big blast. I got to be careful. If I destroy this tower, this whole thing's going to be ruined. And then Natsu's like, oh, all I got to do is destroy this tower? Bonus. So he pulls himself up, and he's like, I'm a lot tougher than you thought, Jalel. And so they start fighting again, and they're going back and forth and showing an anime, and Natsu's kind of getting the shit kicked out of him, but, you know, he's not giving up. And Erza's kind of waking up, and more shonen. Oh, and then it looks like Natsu's starting to get like a little bit on Jalel, and so he starts casting this like abyss attack or whatever, and then Erza like jumps in front of it and it says, if you kill me, you can't sacrifice me. And he's like, whatever, there's other saints. And then he's about to cast this spell, and you see this like ridiculous like abyssal like crazy shadow, and it's like, no, Erza, no. And then when the smoke settles, Simon took it, so Simon's now dead because he took this ridiculous blast. And everyone's like, the fuck? And Simon's like, I always loved you, Erza. And then Jalel's like, oh, that's so cheesy, or that's so cringe. And so Natsu's like, had enough. So he goes and does this like super punch attack at Jalel, and then he starts eating the tower, because the tower is like lacrima that's filled with magical energy, and it's filled with all sorts of magical energy. And then Jalel and Erza are like, what? And then Natsu keeps eating the tower, and Jalel's like, it's not gonna do shit. But you can tell he's a little worried, because he's like, oh. And then Natsu summons like this crazy giant fire dragon thing. And then he just starts beating the shit out of Jalel, and we get a sweet, we get like the end of the ridiculous shonen battle. And then Jalel again is going to cast some sort of like abyssal attack or whatever to like summon Zedef, but then Erza hits him with a sword attack, and then Natsu does like some super giant like fire attack that knocks him into the tower and like destroys the whole tower, just like it collapses in upon itself. And then everyone watching from like the beach, like Lucy and friends, are like, huh. And then Erza's like, is this Natsu's true power? Is this the true power of a dragon slayer? And he just looks badass as hell. He's got like scales on his face and everything. Oh no, sorry. Lucy and the rest are in a bubble like far away. And they're like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden, Natsu's standing there, and he like collapses because of all the energy used. And Erza comes up, gives him a little hugsy-potamus, and then the tower kind of like starts expanding, and everyone's like, oh shit, all that magical energy is going to explode. We're in a lot of trouble now. It starts carrying Natsu out of there, and the whole thing's collapsing. And she's like, oh, I don't know what I do. I got to stop this. And then she's thinking about getting absorbed into the tower again. And she finds this like mirrored portion, and she's like, I got to do it. So then she like starts entering the tower, and Natsu's like, no, Erza, you can't do it. And then she's like, I have to. To me, you guys are the most important thing in the whole world. My friends mean more to me than anything. And then Natsu's like, and she's like, the most important thing to me is to see you all live. And Natsu's like, no, Erza. And then there's like this crazy typhoon of like magical energy that shoots up into the sky. And Natsu's right in the middle of it, and everyone's like, oh, fuck. And then we get, like, flashback. So when Erza first showed up at Fairy Tale, she was, like, missing an eye, or And then the old lady crone is like, oh, I don't know if I can fix that eye, so she'll see again. And then Makarov's like, oh, but she's so beautiful. And she's like, you pervert, you better not be trying to bank on this chick when she gets older. And he's like, no, she's just like a family and stuff. Anyway, so she's like, where did she come from anyway? And it's from Robert. And according to her, she's dead. And then the old woman is like, So I guess she had some connection with Robert because she fixes her eye, but then when Erza cries, she can only cry out of like one side, because the eye's not like totally fixed for whatever reason, and she says it's because she's cried enough for like one lifetime, so it's just not the same. And then we get like a fun, like Erza's wearing like a sexy dress and like floating in the sky, and there's rain, and it's her funeral, and everyone's sad and crying and talking about how great she is. And then of course Natsu comes up, he's like, and then like the council comes over and is like, oh, well, we're gonna make her an honorary member of like the Wizard Saints, and Natsu's like, fuck this, and like kicks over the tomb, and everyone's like, oh, what are you doing? And he's like, I refuse to believe. Erza, you're still alive. Erza's still alive. You're still alive. And then she's like, people are like freaking out, and then he's screaming, and then she's like, I can't do this anymore. And then she like wakes up, and Lucy and Sho and Gray and Juvia and everybody are like running towards her, and they're like, Erza, and they're all crying and happy. And then Erza's like, the fuck? It's Natsu's character, and she's like, wait, what? And she's like, hey, how did you save me? And he just like gives her a look, and then he collapses. And there's like that giant tornado of magic. So he did something. And she's like, holy shit, he's so strong. And he says something about it's the same for all of us. None of us can live without. And never again. I don't want you to ever hurt yourself again or give up. And she's like, thanks, Natsu. You're the best. And it's like, you don't die for your friends. You live for your friends. And she's like, you're right. I guess what I got to do from now on so I can live the path that leads to happiness. Aww. And that wraps up volume 12. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch y'all later.